I was 60 years old the day my past came back to my doorstep. Not with a memory. Not with a phone call. But with an actual knock. I remember standing in my kitchen, stirring a pot of soup I didn't even want. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that settles on your shoulders when you've lived alone for too long. Then it came. A knock. Firm. Familiar. And it hit me right in the chest before my mind could catch up. I froze. Because some knocks, they don't belong to strangers. I wiped my hands slowly, almost afraid to breathe, and walked to the door. Each step felt like I was walking into a memory I never asked for. And when I opened it, I saw him. Marcus, my ex-husband. The man who walked out of our marriage 10 years ago. The man who traded our life for a younger woman, allowed a world, a dangerous little fantasy. He looked older now. Thinner. His shoulders weren't proud the way they used to be. His face carried the heavy truth of a man who'd finally run out of places to hide. He whispered, "Hey, Lena." Just like that. Like we were still married. Like he hadn't broken me clean in half and left the pieces where they fell. I didn't answer him. I just looked. Because understanding a moment often takes longer than living it. And in that silence, I saw everything I needed to see. The guilt, the fear, the weight of all the choices he thought he'd never have to face again. Finally, I asked, "Why are you here, Marcus?" My voice steady, older, wiser. Not the voice of the woman he left behind. He dropped his gaze. He always did that when he didn't have the truth he wanted to tell. And with a voice that cracked like something inside him had finally broken, he said, "I didn't know where else to go." That sentence, it hit me right in the center of my chest. Not because I wanted him back. Not because I still loved him. But because it confirmed the thing I feared for years. He didn't leave because she was better. He left because he thought he could always come back if life didn't go the way he imagined. I let out a slow breath. And for a moment, memories washed over me. Our wedding, our laughter. The night he told me he'd fallen for her. The night I learned how to cry quietly enough that no one would hear. But grief ages differently. It softens. It stops screaming. It becomes something you can finally look in the eye without falling apart. After what felt like an entire lifetime, inside a single moment, I stepped to the side. "Come in," I said. Not out of love, not out of hope. But because some stories cannot stay unfinished. They need an ending, even if it hurts to write it. He walked in slowly, like a man stepping into a home he no longer recognized. And as I closed the door behind him, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet turning, like the beginning of a storm, or the end of one. I didn't know which, not yet. He stepped into my living room like a man walking through a museum of his own mistakes. His eyes moved over the furniture, the pictures, the quiet corners, all the things he once knew, and the things he no longer had the right to claim. I watched him carefully, not with anger, but with a strange kind of curiosity, like seeing a ghost who wasn't supposed to haunt you anymore. "Sit," I said. My voice was calm, older, certain. And that certainty surprised even me. He sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, twisting like he didn't know where to put them. That nervous habit. I used to reach out and still them with my own hands. But those days were gone. I sat across from him in my favorite chair, the one I bought the year after he left. A chair that held me through more nights of healing than I could ever count. "So?" I said. "Tell me why you're really here." He took a breath that sounded heavier than his words. "I messed up, Lena. I messed up my whole life." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Because hearing that from him didn't bring satisfaction. It brought something much quieter, a tired understanding. He rubbed his face. "She left," he said. His voice cracked again. 10 months ago. Packed up her things and walked out. Said she was tired of fixing me." I let the words settle. Not because they hurt me, but because they didn't. And that surprised me more than anything else. "Marcus," I said slowly, "you didn't come here to talk about her. You came here because you're lost." He looked up at me then, really looked. There was no defense in his eyes. No excuses. Just a man stripped down to the truth he avoided for too many years. "I'm sick, Lena," he whispered. Not a whisper of drama, whisper of fear. My heart tightened. Even after everything, I am still human. Still capable of compassion. Still capable of remembering the man he used to be before he forgot how to love me. "What kind of sick?" I asked. My voice softer now, though I didn't mean it to be. He swallowed. "Heart issues. Doctor says it's serious. Stress, lifestyle, too much drinking. Too much pretending everything was fine." He let out a shaky breath. I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to be alone. The honesty hit harder than the illness. Illness that I could understand. But loneliness that was a wound I knew intimately. I leaned back in my chair, not away from him, but into myself, into my own history, into the version of me that once begged a man not to leave. "You know," I said, choosing my words with care. "There were nights after you walked out when I couldn't breathe. Not because I was weak, but because I had built a whole life around someone who didn't stay to live it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Truth has its own volume." He nodded slowly, shame coloring every inch of him. "I know," he said. "I know I hurt you more than anyone ever should." I watched him, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "Marcus," I said gently, "I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it sure doesn't mean you get to walk back into my life like nothing happened." He lowered his head. And in that moment, I could see the wounded boy inside the grown Manthe part of him that never learned how to choose love the right way. But I also felt something shift inside me. A strength, a boundary, a truth I had earned over 10 long years. This wasn't about reopening old wounds. This was about deciding whether I would allow them to bleed again. And I wasn't sure of my answer yet. I sat there for a long moment, just looking at him. Not the man he used to be, but the man he had become. A man carrying sickness in his chest and regret in his eyes. And for the first time in years, I realized something simple. Marcus didn't just leave our home 10 years ago. He left himself too. "So," I said quietly, settling deeper into my chair, "what exactly do you expect from me now?" I didn't ask with anger. I asked with truth. Truth that had taken a decade to grow inside me. He looked up like the question had pierced him. I don't know," he said. His voice shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of an answer he wasn't brave enough to give. "I didn't come here to dump everything on you," he added. I needed to see you." "See me?" I almost laughed. 10 years. 10 years of rebuilding myself. 10 years of learning how to eat dinner alone. 10 years of birthdays without his voice. 10 years of holidays with an empty chair at the table. He had missed everything. "You know what hurts the most, Marcus?" I asked softly. "Not that you left. Not even that you chose her. What hurts is that you didn't even say goodbye properly. You walked out of our life like it was nothing but a door you were tired of opening." He winced. Really winced, the kind of pain that comes when someone finally hears the truth they ran from. "I was a coward," he whispered. "I didn't know how to face you." I nodded slowly. That much I figured out. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. My voice didn't tremble. It didn't crack. Age had steadied it, given it weight. "You missed the years where I learned who I was without you," I said. "Where I woke up and realized my worth didn't depend on another person's attention." He looked at me, his eyes wet not dramatic tears, just quiet ones, the kind men shed when they finally understand something too late. "I'm proud of you," he murmured, and it sounded like a confession. I smiled. A small one. A real one. Not for him, for me. For the woman I had become while he was gone. "You should know something," I said gently. "I didn't spend these 10 years hating you. I spent them healing from you." He exhaled sharply, like the words hit a place he had been protecting. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said. "No," I answered softly. "You don't. But kindness isn't about you. It's about the peace I earned." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Lena, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need help. Not money. Not a place to stay forever. Just someone who remembers who I used to be." Those words, they pulled something deep inside me. Not love, that love had lived its life and died its death. But understanding, yes. Understanding is stubborn. It stays. I took a slow breath. There was a time I would have given him everything. My heart, my home, my future. But now I had boundaries. Now I had myself. "Marcus," I said, steady and warm. "I can listen. I can talk. I can sit with you in the truth of what happened. But I can't lose myself again to save you." He nodded, accepting it like someone accepting their sentence. Not with anger. Not with denial. Just with a tired kind of surrender. And that was the first moment I realized this visit wasn't about reopening old love. It was about rewriting old pain. For both of us. There's something strange about sitting across from the man who broke you and realizing you're no longer breakable. Not by him. Not by anyone. As the minutes passed, I felt a kind of calm forming in my chest. The calm that comes after years of storms, when you realize the worst already happened, and somehow you survived it. He sat there quietly, like he was waiting for me to tell him who he was now. But that wasn't my job anymore, not after everything. I looked at him and said, "Marcus, do you know what I regret the most?" He didn't answer. He didn't even try. He just waited the way people wait for a verdict. "I regret," I began slowly, That I never told my truth when it mattered. He blinked, unsure. But I wasn't talking for him. I was talking for me, for the woman I used to be. The woman who swallowed her pain whole and called it love. I should have told you, I continued, that I felt invisible long before you left. I let the words breathe. I needed to hear them myself. You didn't disappear on me overnight, Marcus. You faded, little by little, piece by piece, and I let you. Because I thought loving someone meant holding them tighter, even as they slipped away. He dropped his head, and for a moment I felt a small echo of the old AK, the one that lived inside me for years. But the echo didn't shake me. It just reminded me how far I'd come. I used to wait for you in the kitchen, I said. Dinner getting cold. My heart getting colder. A soft breath escaped me. Not sadness, not anger, just honesty finally stepping out of the shadows. I should have told you, I said again, that I needed you long before you needed her. He wiped his eyes, silent, still, listening in a way he never listened before. I lived 10 years thinking I wasn't enough, I whispered. And every day since you left, I've learned that wasn't true. You just didn't know how to love someone you couldn't control. That truth, it didn't come with bitterness. It came with clarity, sharp, clean, honest. And the real pain, I added softly, wasn't losing you. It was losing myself trying to keep you. He inhaled sharply like the words cut through something he had been avoiding for a long time. But this wasn't about hurting him. It was about freeing myself. Marcus, I said, I'm not angry anymore. Anger kept me alive, but it never helped me heal. I leaned back, letting my voice soften. What I feel now is something different, something quieter, something stronger. He looked up, searching my face for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe hope, maybe both. But the truth was simple. I'm not the woman you left, I told him, and you're not the man I married. The room felt still after that heavy, but not painful, just honest. And in that stillness, I realized something I had never said aloud, not even to myself. I didn't just grow without you, I said quietly. I grew past you. He closed his eyes, accepting it like a weight he deserved to carry. Not out of punishment, but out of truth. And that was the moment I finally understood that closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from courage, the courage to finally say the things we once whispered only to ourselves. After all the truths I had finally spoken, the room felt different, not heavier, not lighter, just real. Like for the first time in a decade, Marcus and I were sitting in the same moment, instead of the same memory. He shifted on the couch, hands trembling a little, like he didn't know how to hold everything we had just uncovered. And maybe he didn't. Maybe none of us do when honesty arrives late. You know, I said softly. We never had a real conversation the night you left. He nodded, slow and ashamed. You were crying, he whispered. I didn't know how to handle it. I let out a breath. Not anger, just the memory of a wound that had finally closed. I wasn't just crying, Marcus, I said. I was breaking, and you walked away while I was still in pieces. He closed his eyes, like the truth hurt more now than it did then. But that wasn't my burden anymore. I wasn't here to protect him from the consequences of his choices. Not this time. I didn't understand love back then, he murmured. I thought it was something that would always be there, no matter what I did. I leaned back, studying the lines on his face, the ones time carved, and the ones guilt carved deeper. That's the thing about love, I said quietly. It doesn't die easy, but it does die eventually, when someone stops showing up for it. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, I could see the man he once was, buried beneath years of pride, mistakes, and bad decisions. "Lena." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air between us. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just real. And real hurts in a different way. "I know," I replied. "I know you're sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild the years you missed. Sorry doesn't unbreak what broke." He nodded, as if accepting wounds he couldn't fix. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. "What hurt me the most," I continued, "was waking up every day and pretending I wasn't waiting for you. Pretending I wasn't checking my phone. Pretending I didn't listen for footsteps that never came back." My voice softened. Not weak. Just honest in a way I had never allowed myself to be. "I learned to live without you," I said. "And it was the hardest thing I ever did." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face like the truth was too bright to look at. "I ruined everything," he whispered. "No," I said gently. "You ruined us. But you didn't ruin me. I rebuilt myself." Silence settled again, not cold, not angry, just the kind of silence that follows a truth finally spoken aloud. He looked up slowly, his eyes softer, almost pleading. "Do you hate me?" he asked. I shook my head. "Hatred keeps you tied to a person. I let you go a long time ago." He swallowed hard, the kind of swallow a man makes when he knows forgiveness is even heavier than blame. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not turning me away." I nodded. "I didn't let you in for your sake, Marcus. I let you in for mine. Because I needed to know that I could stand in front of you and still be whole." He lowered his gaze again, and for the first time that night, I felt something shift not between us, but within me, like I had finally stepped out of the shadow of the woman I used to be. And for the rest of that night, we talked. Not about love, not about getting back together, not about old dreams. We talked about truth. We talked about the years he missed. We talked like two people, finally brave enough to face the ending they never gave themselves before. The longer we talked, the more I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. We hadn't just lost each other. We had lost time. Time we could never reclaim. Time that had shaped us into strangers who once shared a life. At one point, he leaned back on the couch, exhausted in a way that wasn't just physical. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a decade of regret. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought leaving would make life easier. I thought she and I would have a simple start. Fresh, light. But what I didn't realize was that I carried every mistake from us, straight into that new life." I looked at him long and steady, not judging, just listening. "That's the thing about running," I said. "You take everything with you, even the things you're trying to escape." He nodded slowly, like the truth was settling into him piece by piece. "I kept comparing everything to you," he admitted. "I kept thinking about how patient you were, how gentle you were, how home felt when you were around." I felt a sting in my chest, not love, not longing, just the ache of hearing things I wished he'd said 10 years earlier, back when it mattered. "People don't realize," I said softly, "that when you break someone who truly loved you, you also break the version of yourself they believed in." He looked down, ashamed. "Lena, I wasn't a good man back then." "No," I replied. "You weren't. But neither was I a perfect woman. I allowed too much. I stayed too quiet. I dimmed parts of myself, just to keep peace you didn't even notice." I could see memories playing across his face, the nights he came home late, the arguments we ignored, the distance neither of us acknowledged. "Do you ever think," he asked carefully, "that we could have saved ourselves if we'd just talked more?" I exhaled, letting the question settle deep inside me. "Maybe," I said. "But two people can't save a relationship if only one of them shows up for the work." Time equals sign 1.2s. He ran a hand through his hair, the gray strands catching the light. "I wish I could go back," he whispered. "I wish I could do it all again, and do it right this time." I shook my head gently. "That's not how life works. We don't get returns. We get lessons." His eyes glistened, not with self-pity, but with recognition. "You really built a life without me," he said, almost in awe. "Yes," I answered, "and it wasn't easy, but it was necessary." He swallowed hard. "What was the hardest part?" I paused, not for effect, but because the answer lived deep inside me. "The hardest part," I said slowly, "was realizing that the woman who cried for you died the moment you walked out that door." His breath caught, a wound reopening in slow motion. "But the woman who replaced her," I continued, "she grew. She learned. She became someone even stronger than the version who loved you." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as his wife, not as his past, but as a whole, separate person he no longer had any claim to. And strangely, that felt like freedom. "I'm proud of you, Lena," he said quietly. "More than I can say." I nodded, steady. "I'm proud of me too. And that's something I learned without you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We were just two people, sitting inside a history too big to ignore, too real to rewrite, and too finished to continue. And for the first time that night, I felt the past loosening its grip. Not gone, just no longer steering the wheel. At some point that evening, I realized the air in the room had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was honest. And honesty, when it finally comes, can feel like both a blessing and a wound. Marcus sat there with his hands folded, and for a moment, he looked older than I had ever seen him. Older than his 60 years. Older than the time between us. Like regret had added 10 more years to his face. He cleared his throat. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "Something I've never said to anyone." I stayed still, not curious, just ready for whatever truth was finally coming to the surface. "When I left you," he continued slowly, "I thought I was chasing happiness, freedom, something new. But the truth is," His voice cracked. I was running from myself. He looked straight at me, and there was no pride in his eyes anymore. Just fear. Raw, human fear. I didn't think I deserved the kind of love you gave me, he said. I didn't know how to hold it, how to show up for it, how to be the man you thought I was. I felt something shift in my chest, not forgiveness, not anger, just recognition. Marcus, I said softly, I was not perfect either, but I loved you the best way I knew how. He nodded quickly, like someone agreeing with a truth he had denied too long. And that terrified me, he whispered. I kept waiting for the day you realized I wasn't enough. So when he hesitated. When she showed interest, I thought maybe it meant I still had something to offer. I sat back, letting his confession settle, in the quiet space between us. It wasn't the truth I expected, and it wasn't the truth I wanted, but it was the truth he owed me. So you left, I said, to feel wanted. He nodded. I left because I didn't know how to stay, and face the parts of me you saw too clearly. A strange sadness washed over me, not for us, but for the brokenness he had carried all these years without naming it. I let out a steady breath. Marcus, you didn't ruin our marriage because you stopped loving me. You ruined it because you never learned how to love yourself. His eyes filled not with dramatic tears, but with quiet ones, the kind of tears men shed when they finally understand a truth too late to change it. You're right, he whispered. I didn't love myself, and I didn't know how to love a woman like you. Not properly. I leaned forward a little, my voice steady, strong, different from the woman he left. The tragedy isn't that you made a mistake, I said. It's that you lived 10 years inside that mistake, without ever trying to heal it. He covered his face with both hands, a man unraveling, not from guilt, but from finally seeing himself clearly. I wish I hadn't wasted so much time, he murmured. I wish I hadn't waited this long, to be honest. I nodded slowly. We all learn when it's already late. But late doesn't mean impossible. He looked up, eyes red and vulnerable. Do you think there's any chance you and I could ever be something again? I didn't rush my answer. I let it rise from the quiet strength inside me, the woman who had rebuilt her life, one painful truth at a time. No, I said gently. Not harsh, not cold, just real. You were a chapter in my life, Marcus, but you're not the ending. He bowed his head, accepting the truth, as softly as I had spoken it. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Love isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about finally letting the past take its rightful place behind you. After I told Marcus we could never be what we once were, a kind of stillness fell between us, not angry, not wounded, just the kind of stillness that settles when the truth finally finds its place. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded, eyes lowered, like my words had released something he'd been holding too tightly for too long. It's strange, I said quietly, how the heart can survive things we once thought would destroy us. He looked up at me slowly, and for the first time that night, I didn't see the man who broke me. I saw the man who was broken long before he met me. You know, he whispered, leaving you didn't make me happy. It just made me empty. I folded my hands in my lap, letting his words sit in the space between us. "Marcus," I said, "I spent years thinking I wasn't enough, and you spent years realizing you weren't whole." His breath hitched, not in pain, but in understanding. The kind that arrives late, but still arrives. "I wish I could go back," he murmured again. "I wish I could fix everything." I shook my head. "You can't fix the past, but you can stop carrying it like it owns you." He leaned back, his shoulders loosening as if a weight had finally started to lift. "You forgave me," he said. "You really forgave me." "Yes," I replied. "Forgiveness isn't a gift I gave you. It's freedom I gave myself. I didn't want to live the rest of my life chained to who you used to be." He exhaled a long, shaky breath, like someone tasting relief, for the first time in years. Silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence where hearts finally stop running. After a moment, I spoke again. "Do you know the hardest part of letting go?" He shook his head softly. "It's learning to accept that life can still be beautiful, even after you've lost something you once thought you couldn't live without." I saw the realization spreading across his face, slow, heavy, but honest. "And you did that," he whispered. "You built something without me." I nodded. "I did, and it took time, and nights I cried myself to sleep, and mornings I forced myself out of bed when I felt like disappearing." He swallowed hard, his voice small. "I didn't know you went through all that." "Of course you didn't," I said softly. "You weren't there." His eyes glistened again, not with guilt this time, but with understanding. "Lena," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Yes." "What finally made you let me go?" I took a slow breath, feeling the answer rise inside me, like something I had waited years to say aloud. "One day," I said. "I woke up and realized I didn't want my story to end with a woman waiting for a man who had already chosen to leave. I wanted more than surviving heartbreak. I wanted to live." He covered his mouth with his hand, his chest rising unevenly, a man feeling every truth he once refused to see. "And once I realized that," I continued, "letting go wasn't a punishment. It was a blessing, a doorway, a new beginning." He whispered, almost too softly to hear, "You're stronger than I ever was." "No," I replied gently. "I just chose to stop holding on to someone who wasn't holding me back. That's what strength looks like." And in that moment, with the night wrapped around us and the truth sitting openly between us, I realized something I hadn't seen clearly until now. Letting go hadn't just freed me. It had finally set him free too. As the night grew deeper, our voices grew softer, not because we were tired, but because truth has a way of calming people once it finally comes to light. Marcus looked around my living room, taking in the photographs, the plants, the warm lamps I always kept low. "You made a beautiful life," he murmured, "a life that never needed me in it." I shook my head gently. "It's not that I didn't need anyone. It's that I finally learned not to need the wrong person." He breathed in slowly, like a man preparing himself for something he didn't know how to say. "Lena," he whispered, "can I tell you the truth about why I came here tonight? Beyond being lonely, beyond being sick, beyond the regret." I nodded. Say it. He lowered his voice. Because you're the only person I ever felt safe enough to be broken with. The words hit me not like a wound, but like a weight finally being set down. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence speak first, because some truths require space to land properly. Marcus, I said softly, safety isn't what you felt with me. It's what you took from me. I carried us both for years. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he looked like a child who finally understood the consequences of something he never meant to break. You're right, he whispered. I didn't protect you. Not once. But I'm asking for something now that I've never asked for before. I leaned back, waiting. What is it? He met my gaze. Steady. Clear. Honest. I'm asking you to help me make peace with myself before I leave this world. His words didn't shock me. His voice carried a finality. That illness often gives people a quiet acceptance that time is no longer endless. Are you dying, Marcus? He shook his head slowly. Not yet. But the doctors say I'm on borrowed time if I don't change everything. Everything? I asked. Everything, he echoed. How I live, how I think, how I carry guilt. I felt a heaviness settle inside me, not fear, not love, just the gravity of the moment. Because no matter what he had done, this was still a human being, facing the possibility of the end. And endings. They don't care about old wounds. I'm not asking you to take me back, he continued. I know better than that. But I am asking, he hesitated, voice trembling, if you could walk with me for whatever time I've got left. Not as my wife, not as my partner, just as someone who knew me before I ruined everything. I looked at him for a long moment, not at the sickness, not at the regret, but at the man. The complicated, flawed, broken man I once gave my whole heart to. Could I walk beside him again? Not in love, but in humanity. I don't know, I admitted, and the honesty surprised even me. I've built a life that doesn't revolve around you anymore. A life that finally feels steady. He nodded, accepting it with a slow exhale. I understand. Truly. I just needed to ask. Because the truth is... He let out a shaky breath. I'm tired, Lena. I'm tired of being a man who disappointed everyone he ever loved. His voice broke then, cracked open in a way I had never heard from him before. And something inside me softened. Not for the marriage we lost, but for the human being sitting in front of me, asking for one final chance, to die lighter than he lived. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just said the only truth I had. We'll take it one step at a time. And that was enough to make his shoulders finally lower, as if the world he carried had shifted, even just a little. The night grew quiet, after his request quiet, in a way that didn't feel empty, but sacred. Like life itself was waiting to see how the story would end. Marcus sat across from me, hands resting loosely on his knees, his breathing slow, his gaze soft like he had finally stopped fighting the truth. Not just the truth between us, but the truth inside himself. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. I just watched him, this man I once loved so deeply. I almost disappeared inside that love. This man who once shattered me, without even turning back to see the pieces fall. And now here he was, asking for nothing but a little peace before his time ran out. "Marcus," I said finally, "there's something you need to understand." He lifted his eyes, waiting, almost bracing. "I am not the woman you walked away from. I'm not the woman who begged you to stay. I'm not the woman who cried for months, trying to understand why I wasn't enough." My voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It stood steady, the kind of steady that comes only after surviving something you once feared would end you. "I rebuilt myself," I said. "Piece by piece, day by day. I learned how to breathe again, without waiting for someone else to give me permission to live." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I know," he whispered. "And that's why I came. Because you're the only person who ever saw who I really was, underneath all the noise." I nodded slowly. "I did see you. And maybe that's why the leaving hurt the way it did." Then I leaned forward, not to comfort him, but to meet him exactly where the truth was. "You asked me if I could walk with you, for whatever time you have left," I said. "And I've thought about it." His shoulders tensed, just slightly. Enough for me to see the hope and the fear wrestling in him. "I can't be your wife," I said. "I can't be your home. I can't be the place you returned to, because the world finally turned its back on you." He nodded slowly, accepting each word like a truth he knew, but needed to hear out loud. "But," I added softly, "I can offer you kindness. I can offer you conversation. I can offer you forgiveness, not for the marriage, not for the betrayal, but for the man you didn't know how to be." His breath broke a soft, trembling sound that carried years of regret inside it. "Thank you," he whispered. "God, Lena, thank you." I reached out and placed my hand gently on top of his, not as his wife, not as the woman he once lost, but as a human being who understood the weight of being flawed and the beauty of being forgiven. "You're not alone," I said. "But I won't lose myself again, trying to save someone else. Those days are gone." A soft smile formed on his face, small, sad, but real. "You've become a remarkable woman," he whispered. "I always was," I replied gently. "You just didn't see it then." He nodded, and the quiet between us shifted, turning from memory into acceptance, from regret into closure. And finally, I felt peace settle in my chest, like a warm hand resting over my heart. "I'll walk with you," I said, one step at a time, not backward, not into the past, but forward toward whatever healing we both have left. And for the first time that night, Marcus truly smiled, a tired, grateful smile that looked like someone finally laying down a burden after carrying it far too long. We sat there together, two people whose love had ended, but whose humanity still had something left to give. And that was enough. The past was behind us. The ending had already happened, but peace was the new beginning we both deserved.